When a wrestler returns to WWE, sometimes the writing's on the wall from the moment they make their return entrance. Either the fans have zero interest in seeing that respective wrestler return to the company, or WWE have a bold yet unimaginative plan for the returning talent which is going to turn the fans completely against them. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 WWE returns that were doomed from the start. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out our new website, Wrestlelamia.com. Number 10. Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash has made several WWE returns throughout his career, and his return in 2003 was arguably his most infamous. Nash returned on Raw as a new top babyface on the brand, and he was instantly thrown into a feud with Triple H over the world title. On paper, Nash vs. The Game had true potential, and there was a ton of established history there, but sadly, fans had no interest in seeing Nash in this role. Whilst he no doubt still had something to offer, it just wasn't what the fans wanted to see at the time, especially when SmackDown had the likes of Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle putting on in-ring classics on what seemed like a weekly basis. Nash also returned to the company for a brief stint in 2011. Nash would return yet again at the 2011 SummerSlam pay-per-view, and he would enter into a weird program with CM Punk that was supposed to lead to a matchup. However, Nash was eventually pulled from the match and WWE went in a different direction, and instead Nash was once again feuding with Triple H. Nash will always be a pro wrestling legend, but there's no denying that his numerous WWE returns have failed to hit the mark. Number 9. Test. In 2006, WWE decided to give former Intercontinental Champion Test another shot in the company. Test would join the dreaded ECW brand, and upon his return, it was apparent that he had put on a considerable amount of muscle and he looked to be in truly insane shape. The problem with Test returning was that it wasn't what ECW fans wanted. The ECW faithful ultimately didn't want a semi-successful star from the Attitude Era on the revamped roster. The Test return was doomed to fail, and to nobody's surprise, he received little to no reaction as he returned without a fleshed out character, and it wasn't before long that he was completely lost in the shuffle. Number 8. Goldberg. Upon returning to WWE in 2016, Goldberg was welcomed back with open arms. He had one match against Brock Lesnar at the Survivor Series event, and this was presented as if it was going to be his farewell matchup in pro wrestling. However, just a few short months later, Goldberg returned yet again, and this time he was competing for the world title. Goldberg wrestled Kevin Owens at the 2017 Fastlane event, and WWE for whatever reason booked Goldberg to squash the young star. This meant that Goldberg was now Universal Champion, and this was something that fans really didn't want. These returns continued to happen for the next several years, and WWE booked something similar when Goldberg defeated The Fiend in 2020 to once again win the Universal title. These returns definitely hindered the relationship between Goldberg and the fans, and it's likely to never recover. Number 7. Gail Kim. In late 2008, Gail Kim made the bold decision to leave behind TNA in favor of returning to WWE. Kim was a megastar in TNA, and her matches against Awesome Kong are arguably amongst the most influential women's matches in wrestling history. Kim returning to WWE at the time in which women were barely given substantial storylines on WWE TV, and if they were on TV at all, it was usually for nonsensical segments or matches that didn't give an ounce of credibility to the women's roster. Kim had high hopes for a return, but it was sadly doomed from the start. Kim's initial presentation was strong, however it didn't take long for WWE to completely forget Kim was even signed to the company, and she would barely be featured. Kim discussed her disastrous return to WWE during an interview with 411 Wrestling. When I went back, I did clear my path in terms of how I felt, and I really was optimistic, and at the time I remember, cause it was past the Diva search and all that stuff, that kind had already long gone, and they were starting to have the women wrestle again, and so I felt very positive, and I was like, okay, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, I have more experience under my belt, and I've done this stuff with Awesome Kong, so it did build more confidence. And so I went back. It was disappointing. I'll say that I never felt like I was used to my potential, you know? They had seen what I'd done in TNA, and that's why they hired me back. And so I would think a logical thing would be to use you to your best ability. And you know what is great about that person, about the talents that the person had? But I never felt like that was happening. Kim's exit for a second run was notable as she decided to eliminate herself from a battle royal as an act of protest when it came to how the women were treated in WWE. She would then quit the company before smartly returning to TNA. Number 6. Lord Tensai. WWE made a huge mistake when they brought back Matt Bloom. Instead of giving Bloom one of his established WWE personas, they decided to give him a gimmick of Lord Tensai, and upon the minute he re-debuted on WWE TV, it was clear that this was never going to work. Fans bombarded Tensai with chants of Albert, and despite the negative chants, WWE continued to push Tensai up the card, and they even had plans to make him a main eventer. Eventually, WWE realized that the Tensai character was never going to take off, and Tensai was quickly relegated to the role of a comedic act. Number 5. Eva Marie. From the moment it was reported that WWE had re-signed Eva Marie, the collective response from fans was, why? Eva's first run in the company was met with negative reviews, as even though she had heel heat, her in-ring work wasn't at the level needed for the main roster. When she returned, fans were hoping that Eva would have been able to improve somewhat, but she was arguably even worse. Eva had some atrocious matches during the run, including a critically panned SummerSlam match with former women's champion Alexa Bliss. It's hardly a surprise that her run was a total failure, and Eva claims that there's even a chance that she could return to WWE in the future, but this certainly shouldn't be at the top of WWE's list of priorities. Number 4. Kurt Angle. Fans were elated when Kurt Angle finally returned to WWE in 2017, but there was a major issue when it came to Angle during his final run in the company. The issue with Angle's return was that due to a long and documented history with injuries, Angle wasn't in a position to have 5-star classic matches. Whilst Angle started off as Raw General Manager, it didn't take long for him to transition into a wrestler once again. Angle's matches with AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and the infamous Baron Corbin matchup failed to deliver, and it was evident that Angle was ready to retire. But in order to combat this, WWE should have either kept Angle as a Raw GM in a non-wrestling role, or they should have added limited to matches in order to keep Angle's aura and star power intact. Number 3. Scott Steiner. In late 2002, WWE re-signed Scott Steiner, and judging by Steiner's initial reaction at the Survivor Series, there was a definitive buzz surrounding his return. Even though Steiner was a big deal in WCW, the late 2002 landscape of WWE was vastly different. Steiner had drop foot syndrome, and this limited his ability to even have passable matches, and his world title matches with Triple H in 2003 were unbelievably bad. Steiner's second run being a colossal failure was ultimately WWE's error. It was widely reported that WWE were fully aware that Steiner had drop foot, and how on earth they expected him to have world title level matches with his issue is anyone's guess. Number 2. Ronda Rousey. When Rousey returned to WWE in 2022, fans hoped for the same, but something was missing. The fire Rousey had in her initial run had disintegrated, and it was as if she was going through the motions. Rousey's feuds with Charlotte Flair, Liv Morgan, and even Shayna Baszler all fell flat. She went from being the biggest name on the roster to barely being mentioned on TV, as fans just stopped caring. And number 1. Batista. The return of Batista in 2014 couldn't have come at a worse time. WWE fans had firmly chosen Daniel Bryan as the top babyface in the company, however WWE wanted this to be Batista. When Batista returned, the fans outright rejected everything he did. This ruined all of WWE's plans, and it was completely short-sighted of them not to have prior foresight that this would have occurred. It took WWE some time, but they would eventually turn the WWE legend back into a heel, which was the right move, but it was too little too late. Speaking about this less than stellar return during an appearance on Lillian Garcia's podcast, Batista stated, "It was horrible. I try not to take it personally, but I really did, and it hurt because it's hard to tell people that you want to be there for the right reasons, but they don't want to hear it. They don't care why you're there, they just don't want you there. I felt I was where I wanted to be, and we were pushing the personal stuff aside. I was kind of getting past that, but I had to leave. I had to go promote Guardians of the Galaxy. I was obligated to do that." But there you have it, folks, 10 WWE returns that were doomed from the start. Which return was the worst? Let us know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.